lately. And
imports last year jumped 24% of Russian oil and gasoline and so forth coming to the United States to a record 245 million barrels. So last year, the United States imported 250 million barrels of Russian crude oil and petroleum products. What does this mean for the consumer? Obviously, it means extremely higher prices from here.
And Short, president of the Short Group there, also telling us gas prices in the tri-state area and across the nation will surge if that move actually takes place and the U.S. moves to block Russian petroleum products. And it'll be a maskless Monday in New Jersey. Kids at schools in New Jersey will be allowed to go to school without masks as far as the state is concerned. More from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Students and staff can go maskless, and this also applies to daycare settings. But districts and child care facilities will be allowed to keep their own mask rules in place if they choose, and any individual who chooses to wear a mask will have the right to do so. New York State lifted its mask mandate this past week after the Connecticut mandate ended last Monday. Some local school districts in the tri-state area are keeping their mandates up for a little while longer, but many districts and towns are following their state government's example.
And in New York, the mask mandate for schools in New York City and also the COVID-19 proof of vaccination for indoor venues, including restaurants and bars. Well, that lifts on Monday as well. Global News 24 hours a day. On air on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. In the newsroom, I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
To talk about some of the more interesting aspects of business of sports, there's all kinds of cool questions, so this is a fun topic to make.
The country is finally getting the memo about how amazing the sport is. I think the sky's the limit for MLS.
We're spending more and more of our time in a digital world, and it's also becoming a really powerful place for commerce.
It is so nice to be back and to be able to have fans back in the building. So despite the chaotic schedule, this is why we do what we do.
When you get into the playoffs, there's nothing better as a player. It's excitement. It is also for the organization. Sponsors involved.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show where we explore the big old money issues in world sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Mike Lynch.
Coming up on the show, the MLB lockout continues. We get the latest on CBA negotiations with MLB Network's John Morosi. Plus, catch up with Noel Lamontagne, former offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns and director of the pro team at Prudence Capital Advisors. We get his take on a big story at the intersection of professional sports and wealth management. That's straight ahead on the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. But first, let's look at some of the other topics of the week. And there's a lot to talk about involving Russia, coming into Ukraine. And it obviously, the human aspect of that, we cannot even compare that with sports. But we are the business of sports. And there are a lot of things, a lot of sports issues that came out of that. One involved a very rich man.
Yeah, you're talking about Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich, who is selling the Chelsea Football Club. It's interesting because he was previously looking to transfer the stewardship and care of the club to members of his charitable foundation, and it's not clear how that was going to happen. He had not mentioned anything about giving up ownership, but now that's changed. And of course, the backdrop to all this is the UK has proposed these new laws that would target wealthy Russians, which would include Abramovich, and some of these laws might include freezing their assets. So now he's announced that he's going to sell the club outright, and saying it's a painful and personal sacrifice. He's specifically saying he's not asking for any loans to be repaid. We know he's invested about $2 billion of his personal fortune in the club over 20 years. And he's doing it with a very urgent timeline. Lynchy, it feels like he needed to get this done yesterday.
Well, of course, because I thought that as we mentioned earlier, that they may freeze the assets, especially in the United Kingdom. The good news out of this is that the proceeds from the sale of the Chelsea Football Club are going to be used to help and aid the victims of Ukraine, those who are injured, those who are ill, and those who are just scrambling out of the country, finding a place to live.
Now, with the soccer story, the Paralympics, they have said that Russia and Belarus, you cannot play in the games. It's a reversal from what they said earlier, but then so many other athletes said, you know what, if they're in, I'm out. I'm sure nobody's happy that these athletes now, it's not the greatest decision in the world, but for what the games are saying, this is best for the Paralympic Games.
I think you nailed it. Nobody's happy with any of this. Ordinary Russian athletes are being punished, and they're not the ones who are directing what's happening when it comes to Ukraine. So it's unfortunate for everyone involved. But there's this sense in the U.S. and Europe that we have to use soft power to get Putin to understand what's happening here.
This all was precipitated by the curlers from Latvia who refused to compete against Russia. And the people who run the Paralympics were really surprised about this. So they're expelling the athletes. There are 71 of them from Russia and a dozen of them from Belarus who have been expelled from the games. Otherwise, there'd be no games at all. Nobody would want to compete. And again, athletes that have trained for years and years and years to get over to Beijing, they're going now through March 13th. But they're going to proceed from this point forward without Russian and Belarus para-athletes.
I also want to mention other sports that are cutting ties or suspending their relationships with Russian business partners. And I bring up hockey because obviously I'm a hockey fan, but 5% of the NHL players are Russian. So this is kind of a big deal for the NHL to suspend its relationships there, pausing Russian language social and digital media sites, really putting aside any consideration of Russia as a location for any future NHL competition. You wonder what kind of pressure this puts on the players, and I'm thinking of Alex Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals, for instance, who has posted with Putin on his Instagram account, or Artemi Panarin, who had to take a leave of absence from the Rangers for a while because he had criticized Putin in the past, and there were threats made against him. The players are really in the crosshairs right now.
There was talk at some point about revoking visas of Russian hockey players in the National Hockey. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's for the greater good of the league. But to be a Russian dissident is a very difficult position to be in. We've seen it over the years. And it's very, very hard for these hockey players, I think, to take a political stance.
There is another story. Tiger Woods. He didn't play a single official PGA Tour event last year, but the golf organization still designated him as the face of the sport. Tiger Woods, he won an $8 million PGA prize.
Just for being Tiger.
Phil Mickelson came in second, $6 million. And then Phil Mickelson, he tweeted out, hey, thank you all for giving me the top prize. And Tiger responded back, whoops. You know, it says something that Tiger Woods is still the face of golf.
It's called the Player Impact Program, and they measured a bunch of different things, none of which involved, like you said, actually what happened on the green. The metrics that were used to determine that Tiger won, 5 criteria: Nielsen ratings, Google searches, MVP index, meltwater mentions, I don't know what that is, and Q rating, which is based on a player's appeal and popularity on social media.
By the way, to wrap it up, Tiger Woods number 1, Phil Mickelson 2, Rory McIlroy 3rd, Jordan Spieth 4th, Bryson DeChambeau 5th, Justin Thomas 6th, Dustin Johnson 7th, Brooks Koepka 8th, Jon Rahm 9th, and Bubba Watson finished 10th. Coming up next on the show, we speak with Noel Lamontagne, former NFL offensive lineman and director of the pro team at Prudence Capital Advisors. Straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports, I'm Michael Barr. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Bar Sports.
I'm Scarlett Fu. I'm on Twitter at Scarlett Fu, 1T.
And I'm Mike Lynch on Twitter at LynchyWCBB.
And don't forget to catch our podcast. That's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on all your podcast platforms right here on Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
As the world reacts to war in Ukraine,
President Biden and our allies are doing more now to crack down on Russia.
set aside Sundays to stay informed. Starting at 11 a.m., Meet the Press.
Is NATO ready to confront Russia militarily?
Fox News Sunday.
Looking at Kyiv now, let's go there.
ABC This Week.
Some more signs of dissent inside Russia.
And Face the Nation.
We go now to the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations.
Sundays on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Dear Calvary Hospital, my mother Lucy was the best mom anyone could ask for. She lived a full 100 years appreciating life, especially her family. At the end of her life, when all other hospitals could not relieve her pain and suffering, Calvary Hospital did. She found all the comfort and love she needed there, as well as the quality of life she deserved. Even during the pandemic, Calvary's expert nurses and doctors kept Mom safe and out of pain. I was never concerned about her safety. Through technology, our entire family stayed in touch with her. Even on Mom's 100th birthday, we celebrated together, one last time as a family. Thank you, Calvary. Nancy and DiNardo.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. During this time, be assured that Calvary continues to provide the safest and healthiest environment for our staff, our patients, and their families.
Straight ahead.
Are you in possession of gold, silver, or platinum? Maybe even some rare coins or old paper money that you'd like to sell? Stack's Bowers Galleries offers top dollar with immediate cash payment and is one of the largest, most trusted and ethical dealers and auctioneers of numismatic items in the U.S. for 90 years. Come visit our location on Park Avenue between 57th and 58th today for a free, no-obligation appraisal of your precious metal bullion items, rare coins, or old paper money. Whether you're in the market to buy or sell your valuable coins or precious metal, we can help. For more information or to speak to a trusted specialist, just call us at 212-582-2580. That's 212-582-2580. We'll help turn your collectibles into a generous cash payment today. Visit us in person or online at stacksbowers.com. That's STACKS Bowers.com. Stop by one of our locations today in New York City, Philadelphia, or Boston, coming in 2022.
Now, Bloomberg traffic and weather. We have traffic troubles on the Jackie Robinson Parkway, westbound Metropolitan Avenue up to Cypress Hill Street. We've got police department activity and all lanes are closed to traffic. Gowanus Expressway eastbound the Gowanus Canal out to Cadman Plaza. Very heavy traffic there. Now, the GW Bridge, Lincoln and Holland tunnels, no traffic troubles. You're in fine shape. We do have a crash on the New York State Thruway. It's northbound into Corporate Drive. That's causing some delays. The Bloomberg 11:303 day weather forecast. Mostly cloudy today. Highs near 45. Tonight, plenty of clouds. Chance of a late night shower. Temperatures rise overnight. Tomorrow, some morning showers. Some afternoon sunny breaks. Breezy. High 65 to 70. Tomorrow night, partly to mostly cloudy, low 50 to 55. And then the outlook for Monday, it'll be cloudy and mild rain likely during the afternoon, high 65 to 70 degrees. With the best ride in and out of the city, I'm Janelle Kristen, Bloomberg 11:30. Time now to check sports.
In Phoenix, the Suns beat the Knicks 115-114. Cam Johnson is a three-pointer at the buzzer. He scores a career-high 38. It's the Knicks' 7th straight loss. The Nets are back in action Sunday in Boston. At the Garden, Rangers over the Devils 3-1. Spring training games will begin no earlier than March 18th, while team owners of the Players Association negotiate a new collective bargaining agreement. Victor Hovland has a 2-shot lead after 2 rounds at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Stern.
This is Bloomberg Business and Sports with Michael Barr, Scarlett Fu, and Mike Lynch from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Mike Lynch.
Coming up on the show, opening day delay on. We'll get the latest on CBA negotiations with MLB Network's John Morosi. But first, let's talk wealth management for professional athletes. I need to call this guy, too. According to a report from the New York Times, Milwaukee Bucks point guard Drew Holiday and his wife, former pro soccer player and Olympic gold medalist Lauren Holiday, they have joined 2 NBA players in a lawsuit against Morgan Stanley and a former broker alleging inappropriate distribution of money. The Holidays allege that the ex-Morgan Stanley broker was entrusted to make basic long-term investments but steered millions of dollars to dubious individuals, losing most of it in the process. So let's talk more about all of this with Noel Lamontagne. He is the director of the pro team at Verdant Capital Advisors and a former offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns. See, that's where I know that name. Noel, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you all having me on.
Well, let's start with that because we did the setup there about some of the players that are saying, "Hey, we were scammed." My question to you is, if this is true, is this something that's normal that happens in the business?
Unfortunately, the more that we have helped provide the types of services that we do for ultra high net worth individuals into the athlete entertainer space, the more we're seeing a lot of questionable things being done with the assets of these types of individuals. And I think it boils down to there's a lot of athletes and entertainers who have so many other things going on in their lives that they're asleep at the wheel when it comes to their finances. And whether something nefarious or just something maybe unknown, agreed upon, but not 100% aware of what was actually happening here. I can tell you that we're just seeing too much of this. There's too much of a lack of awareness in this space with these types of clients. They're not paying enough attention to what their advisors are doing with their money, why they're doing it, how the mechanisms actually work. They're giving up control in ways that they shouldn't be giving up control. And, you know, in the good old days, people just wanted to stuff all their cash into mattresses. Unfortunately, that would actually be a better outcome than what a lot of these people are doing, trying to get in with these fancy boutique groups and individuals who really just aren't looking out for their best interest.
Well, professional athletes are definitely more vulnerable than a lot of ordinary investors. There was an Ernst & Young report last year quoted in the Times that said professional athletes reported almost $600 million in fraud-related losses from 2004 to 2019. So certainly there's a trend there, and it's troubling. But the folks who say they got scammed here, they did what a lot of ordinary investors do and what they should do, right? They relied on a big-name brokerage, Morgan Stanley, and it's not like they went and found someone dodgy. They found someone that is attached to a firm that has a reputation for doing things properly. I mean, how could they have gotten around this?
You actually just hit a really key point in my mind is that study that reveals those statistics that, you know, individuals like athletes or entertainers are more susceptible. Everybody is exactly equally susceptible. There's nobody that's any less susceptible than anybody else. What it boils down to, and it's something that we preach, we're extremely proactive when it comes to the transparency side of things. And I think in the athlete entertainer space, you really have to be proactively transparent. You have to sit some of these individuals down. You have to show them exactly what you're doing. You have to show them why you're doing it. You have to meet with them more often. You have to educate them, because if you don't, the psychology, I think, of a lot of these alpha individuals is to just not want to be perceived in any way, shape, or form as weak or not intellectually on par or not understanding something. They don't want to ask the question. So you have to force them to see the answer to the question that they're not asking. And that's something that we've really focused on. And I don't necessarily think that's unique to athletes and entertainers. And it is scary that this was a big box firm and this was somebody who, well, you know, you should be able to walk into this group and know that this advisor is held to a standard and they're not going to do anything that would be in any way, shape, or form perceived as cross the line. Unfortunately, if you're not paying attention to exactly what's going on with your assets, anybody can do that to anybody.
Hey, Noel, it's Mike Lynch up in Boston. I know we spoke about this a couple of years ago. I'm involved in this financial literacy program up in Boston called Credit for Life, where we have, about 1,200 high school kids come in and they pick a profession and they go around to every booth and they have, electricity, utilities, they have automotive, they have housing, they have education, they have vacation, and they try to fit it in their budget. And it's stunning how eye-opening it is that most of these kids don't even know how to balance a checkbook. I can only imagine the lack of empowerment that some of these athletes have financially when they come to you. Do you feel like you almost have to be a mentor or a tutor at first before you become a financial advisor?
And this goes across the spectrum of whether it's a young athlete or even a veteran, because what we've seen is just over the course of time, there really is a lack of literacy in this space. And the problem is that they don't even want to recognize it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to pursue it because, listen, finance and the handling of assets and all the different things that go on, especially when you start getting into really complex situations with individuals with a lot of assets who are building a lot of wealth, it's very, very daunting. So when you do educate them, when you do help them become literate in this space, it's extremely empowering to them. And if you start with them at the beginning of their careers or when they're younger, you can see it build over time. And it's really impressive when an older athlete who you've worked with and mentored and helped educate over, say, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, when they come to you and somebody in the locker room or somebody walks up to them after a game and presents them with the next Bitcoin, they've already asked for the right documentation. They've already asked the right questions. They've already, in a way, done some of the preliminary due diligence. And you can have these conversations and just say, okay, you know what? I've actually given this individual the skill set to defend themselves, to protect their wealth.
Noel, you are the man. Thank you so much for joining us. And you give great advice about money. I mean, it's right in the name, Verdon's Capital Advisors. I mean, it's right there. See, it's built right in the name, so that's why you're very good at this. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. You all are very kind.
Well, you should see Lynchy on a Saturday morning when he's up too early. Up next,
I don't know if I would sign up for that.
Up next on the show, we speak with MLB Network's John Morosi. Latest on the lockout, that's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Michael Barr. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Bar Sports.
I'm Scarlett Fu. I'm on Twitter at Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Mike Lynch on Twitter at LynchyWCBB.
And don't forget to catch our podcast. That's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on all your podcast platforms and right here on Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
In 2 miles,
I'm Paul Sweeney. Join us for Bloomberg Intelligence. Each week, we provide in-depth research and data on some of the 2,000 companies and 130 industries we cover around the world. This week, Berkshire Hathaway's pace of stock buybacks could be slowing, plus healthcare's path to digital transformation.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney. Today at noon on Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
God, I'm so stressed. It's a brand new year and our business is busier than ever. Ooma. What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 35 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Starts at $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Cyber technology and environmental engineering are two of the most complex problems facing mankind today. New Jersey Institute of Technology and Ben-Gurion University of Israel are joining forces to establish the Institute for Future Technologies. Both universities share a dedication and commitment to solving some of the world's global challenges. The collaboration includes research and development, joint degree programs, innovation and entrepreneurship, and student exchange experiences. Through this partnership, BGU and NJIT will create new technologies and technologists who will have a major impact on everyday life. Craig Gottsman, Dean of NJIT's Yingwu College of Computing, noted, "The global challenges of the past few years have proven that computing and cyber technologies are now more important than ever before." For more information about the Institute for Future Technologies, STEM education, and real-world innovation, visit futuretechnologies.njit.edu.
Verdon LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Industry Chat with Tony Gallo, Principal of Concept Fund Services, a division of Verdon Accountants and Advisors.
In today's demanding and competitive environment, it is essential for business leaders to remain focused on developing and implementing a strategic plan that leads to continued growth and success. Outsourcing the financial and accounting functions of a business not only helps to reduce overall payroll and employee expenses, but also helps to enhance strategic planning and increase efficiency by freeing up an organization's management team to focus on what matters most, running and growing the business. If you're a CEO or business owner, let Concept Fund Services and Verdon help streamline your finance function and protect you, your family, and your business.
For more industry chat from Verdon Accountants and Advisors, visit VerdonLLP.com. That's VerdonLLP.com. Verdon Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
The Audi Q5 represents everything we've learned from building one of the world's most progressive vehicles. With forward-thinking technology like standard rear cross traffic assist, this car was born to non-conform. The Audi Q5 is here. Progress is never blending in.
Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your tri-state area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today. Or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Bloomberg.com/professional.
Now, Bloomberg traffic and weather. We have traffic troubles as you travel right now in Queens. The Jackie Robinson Parkway closed westbound between Metropolitan Avenue and Cypress Hill Street. That's because of police department activity. GW Bridge, not bad. In or out of town, pretty quiet at the Lincoln. Same at the Holland Tunnel. We do have some traffic troubles as you travel on 25A in Kings Park. A crash eastbound into St. John Land Road has been cleared away, but leftover slowdowns. Garden State Parkway extra heavy southbound 142 down to 140. And Route 17, very heavy Century Road up to Linwood Avenue, and also southbound Route 4 down to Essex Street. The Bloomberg 11303 there with a forecast. Cloudy today, highs near 45. Tomorrow, showers. Then some afternoon sunny breaks, breezy, high 70 on Monday. Cloudy, mild rain likely during the afternoon, high 70 degrees again. With the best ride in and out of the city, I'm Janelle Chrisman, Bloomberg 1130. Time now to check sports.
In Phoenix, Cam Johnson is a three-pointer at the buzzer, giving the Suns a 115-114 win over the Knicks. Johnson scores a career-high 38, 25 for Julius Randle. It's the Knicks' seventh straight loss. A 9-all for the Nets. Tonight, St. John's plays at Marquette. At the Garden, Rangers over the Devils 3-1. Major League players are launching a fund for workers affected by the lockout. It'll be administered by the Players Association and distributed to stadium workers who face financial hardship due to the lockout. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Stern.
Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is New York's only 24-hour source for breaking business news and market-moving headlines. Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
This is a special report. Russia invades Ukraine. The White House press secretary is not confirming speculation that the Biden administration is considering banning Russian oil imports.
But what we are also mindful of is not taking steps that would have the impact of raising energy prices, raising oil prices, raising gas prices for the American public.
Jen Psaki said if you reduce supply in the global marketplace, you're going to raise gas prices in the U.S. There is growing bipartisan calls in Congress to ban Russian oil imports because of the invasion of Ukraine. A Ukrainian city has canceled evacuations after accusing Russia of breaking a ceasefire. Earlier today, Russia and Ukraine said they had agreed to a temporary ceasefire in two southeastern cities, including the port city of Mariupol, so citizens can evacuate. But the Mariupol City Council said Russian forces continued shelling the city after the evacuations were set to begin. I'm Brad Siegel.
And I'm Denise Pellegrini in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Ukraine's President Zelensky continues to call for a no-fly zone over Ukraine, as we've been reporting, with the help of international partners, including the U.S. and NATO. So far, both not agreeing to this amid concern it would widen the war significantly. But retired Colonel Steve Ganyard says it would be an effective move in terms of protecting Ukrainians.
Another absolutely remarkable thing about this conflict, the vaunted Russian Air Force pretty much nowhere to be seen. And so a no-fly zone would be intended to take care of that Air Force or to keep them from attacking civilians. In this case, it's the artillery we're worried about. It's that artillery getting closer to Kyiv to start that siege or to begin to crush the civilian opposition.
Ganyard also says trust among Ukrainians over ceasefires with Russia has been broken by Russia's actions today. Meantime, the White House said to be considering blocking imports of Russian oil and petroleum products. As we've been reporting, though, this could cause pump prices to go up even more as the U.S. stares down inflation already. Moody's announcing it'll suspend commercial operations in Russia. Moody's Investor Service will maintain analytical coverage for existing ratings from outside Russia. And Russia's efforts to halt fertilizer exports by domestic producers threatens to shock the global market. More on what's happening with that from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It could push prices of crop nutrients to new records, exacerbating food inflation around the world. Russia's Ministry of Industry and Trade urged Russian fertilizer producers to cut volumes to farmers because of delivery issues with foreign logistics companies. Russia has been facing increasing international sanctions since invading Ukraine. It is a major low-cost exporter of every type of crop nutrient.
All right, thank you, Charlie. At Global News, 24 hours a day. On air on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. In the newsroom, I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business and Sports with Michael Barr, Scarlett Fu, and Mike Lynch from Bloomberg Radio. Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports Show. We explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Mike Lynch. And let's turn to Major League Baseball now, where the lockout continues. The league announced the delay of the 2022 regular season after failing to come to an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement with the Players Association. Commissioner Rob Manfred addressed the media this past week.
So far, the parties have failed to achieve their mutual goal of reaching an agreement. The calendar dictates that we're not going to be able to play the first two series of the regular season, and those games are officially canceled.
MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. Let's break this all down with MLB Network's John Morosi. John, welcome to the show. What happened? Why do we have this at this moment right now for sports fans, a lockout in MLB?
I think both an issue of the short term and the long term. For a number of years now, the players have had a number of concerns about how younger players in particular are being paid, and also how the free agent market is functioning, where in years gone by, when players had a very strong 6 years to begin their careers, they were rewarded with lucrative multi-year contracts. But now with the current generation of leadership at the club level, very statistically driven, there's been a lot of research done to say, wait a minute, players that are in their 30s are not as productive as they are in their 20s, so when these players hit free agency, I'm going to just decide to invest in my younger players and let them be promoted from within, because that is cheaper and more efficient. And so when that decision process is replicated, there's a lot of hard feelings on the part of the union. So against that backdrop of years of, I think, a reduction in the collaboration between the sides, you have now this CBA negotiation becoming very pitched from a standpoint of the feelings on both sides and what each side is trying to achieve here, where the union believes the status quo is simply not tenable any longer. And MLB, I think on their behalf, they've proposed a number of wins for the players, increasing the minimum salary to $700,000, increasing this new bonus pool for younger players to be paid when they have historic types of achievements. So there have been wins put in this agreement, Michael, but just not enough to where the union is satisfied. I think ultimately we're going to have to see that competitive balance tax threshold that we talk so much about, which is the union calls it a soft cap. It is effectively the upper bound that teams can spend to before they're penalized with a luxury tax back into central baseball and revenue sharing. That is now, I think that the key question is of how high that number can go. And until that number gets higher than where it is right now, which is $220 million per team per year, I think this lockout's going to continue.
So we were talking with Noah LaMontagne a little bit earlier. He's a former collegiate and NFL player, and he now runs Verdant's Capital Advisors. And he was just remarking how the MLB Players Union is strong. It's stronger than, say, the NFL Players Union. The players are united. They're educated on this. They have a longer career in the sport than, say, football players do. They've got the experience. They've gone through a lot together. I'm just curious, from where you stand, how formidable is this union versus, say, other players' unions in other sports? Because they're up against Rob Manfred, who will represent the owner side.
Right, Scarlett, it's a great question. I think anecdotally this is as strong as we have seen the union in a long time, maybe in decades, in terms of the unification of that group. And they've been preparing for this for a while. They have seen these storm clouds coming. And I would say this, that both sides in this negotiation, it's important, I think, for us to all remember that they're not monolithic in any way. On the players' side, there are fundamental differences in terms of the backgrounds of the players. Obviously, a college player, a high school player, an international player, they all arrive to this point with different life experiences. And in some ways, it's difficult to stitch together a unified front when you're talking about a player who perhaps has a high school education, signs at 18, and this is now their chance to make it big professionally. That person who has not yet really earned a big fortune is in a fundamentally different place than, for example, a Max Scherzer who just signed another lucrative free agent deal with the New York Mets. The New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, has a different set of economic and financial parameters and expectations than the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Miami Marlins or the Tampa Bay Rays. I think we'll never really know, Scarlett, but I think it's a very interesting question that you're raising here. Would we already have a deal if you were to put in a vacuum Rob Manfred and his negotiating team to say, what do you think is a fair deal? And if they were to then strike that deal, we might already have a deal, so to speak, but for the fact that 2/3 of the owners must ratify it. So this is not necessarily just what is a fair deal according to Rob Manfred. It's what is a fair deal in the mind of, to use the political term, his caucus.
Up next on the show, stay tuned for more of our conversation with MLB Network's John Morosi. And we'll also talk about trying to get the pay for the young players in baseball. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business with Sports. I'm Michael Barr. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Bar Sports.
I'm on Twitter at Scarlett Fu.
And I'm on Twitter at LynchyWCBB. And don't forget to catch our podcast. That is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on all your podcast platforms and right here on Bloomberg Business with Sports, Bloomberg Radio.
Breaking news first. The stakes have been raised even higher now in Russia's war with Ukraine.
We've seen Russian shelling of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station.
The U.S. Energy Department says it's activated its nuclear incident response team. Prices for wheat, aluminum, nickel, and crude are all expected to continue rising.
There's pressure on President Biden to go further.
Things are going to get worse before they get better.
For the latest headlines and the effects on the markets, stay with Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
In half of a mile,
Today,
right
nearly
turn,
all business is international business. The same goes for business disputes. That's why the International Center for Dispute Resolution provides a faster, more efficient approach to dispute resolution across borders. Backed by the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of dispute resolution services. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Today's business professionals have little or no time for delays or interruptions in their car service schedules. UTOG understands this concern, and our tradition of keeping our customers on time is why many of the finest firms in this city have chosen UTOG as their primary carrier. Please visit us at utog.com. That's UTOG.com, or call 718-361-1170 to open a personal or corporate account. Credit card reservations are welcome.
You have the right technology to propel your firm's growth. Bloomberg Buy-Side Solutions are engineered to deliver a seamless enterprise experience. Data, analytics, trading, risk, operations. The buy side from every side. Visit Bloomberg.com/buy-side.
Inovalon is a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare. Leveraging deep connectivity, the data of billions of medical events, and advanced analytics, Inovalon empowers the achievement of improved clinical outcomes and financial performance for thousands of health insurance companies, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, and pharmaceutical companies, and the millions of patients they serve every day. Inovalon. Data has a story to tell. We give it a voice. Learn more at Inovalon.com.
Hayden & Regal is one of the largest independently owned global investment management firms with more than 118